I think anyone who knows me knows that Naomi Campbell has for a long time held such a special place in my heart and has had a profound influence on my perception of beauty. Growing up in the early 2000s, there were literally almost zero representations of dark-skinned Black women in the media. Of course, I had people in my community that I could see myself in, and thankfully, as a Nigerian, I had icons like Inieda and Genevieve Nananji and other Nolly babes to hold up as standards of dark-skinned Black beauty. But Naomi's presence on the global stage was always unique. She was always on the runway, and with every appearance, she exuded this otherworldly presence that captivated me as a child. And honestly, I don't really remember a time in my life that I didn't know who she was. Like, I for real can't even recall the moment I discovered her, because she was simply always there, an ever-present figure of glamour and elegance. I feel like this has been talked about to death on the internet, but growing up, I really struggled with my identity as a young Black girl. Not in terms of my actual self-concept or a desire to be a lighter complexion, but more so, it was hard to deal with the world's reaction to me.
He said, because you're too dark-skinned, she told me don't ever bring anyone into the house that was dark-skinned, because I'm too dark, he said. And because he was too dark, and that she felt that he should date lighter-skinned women, even white women, to lighten his family up. How did that make you feel? Made me feel lousy, absolutely lousy.
And this was really heightened by the fact that I grew up in various predominantly white areas, where in some of them I was the only Black girl or one of very few Black people in my classes, or one of the only families of color in the towns that I lived in. This brought about a feeling of otherness that at times in my life really affected me. So it was always empowering to see someone who looks like me be so elevated and admired in a world that so often doesn't value Black beauty. During my teen years, when I was going through a particularly rough time myself, I became convinced that much of the negativity surrounding Naomi was due to A, microaggressions.
You know, I know just as a Black woman that I had to prove myself 150%.
You've been open about the fact that at times you weren't paid as much as your white counterparts.
Of course I wasn't.
White counterparts.
I wasn't paid as much. Wasn't given the same opportunities. Some people are like, so why are you still working so much now? Because I'm being given the opportunities now, maybe. Then I had to prove myself.
And these cycles of abuse that likely manifested in her after entering the modeling industry, essentially completely alone at such a young age. I believe these pressures had shaped the way she responded to the world around her. Let me be clear, I never thought for a second that her actions and the various physical assaults against her employees were in any way okay. I just couldn't help but feel a deep sadness for the teenager she once was, and probably admittedly projecting, wondered what she must have endured during those years that shaped her into the person she eventually became. See, I could relate to the idea of someone being shaped by the harshness of their circumstances. However, Naomi's more recent controversies have really brought to light for me just how many troubling things she's been involved with. Her associations with abusers, allegations of violence against others, and even accusations of stealing from the charitable organizations she leads. These criticisms are completely deserved, and they forced me to recontextualize my ideas of her in so many ways. The fact that she has been involved in these things has left me grappling with my admiration for someone who I once idolized. It's always difficult to square away your love for someone's work with the reality of who they show themselves to be. And to be honest with you, I've been working on this video for months, and it originally started off solely about Naomi and her contribution to the fashion industry. However, in light of all of the news surrounding her, I cannot in good conscience not speak about those things. This is a video that has been through many rewrites and edits, but every time I feel happy with the video and the way that I've chosen to present the information, more news about another awful man that she's linked with seems to resurface, and that in itself I think requires a lot of unpacking. So I really hope in this video I've managed to express myself in a way that makes sense and honors the victims impacted both by Naomi and by the horrible individuals that she has collaborated with over the years. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I'm still quite new to uploading on YouTube, and this is by far my most personal and probably first video that I have have made involving such serious topics. So please keep that in mind as you watch. And also, if you have come here expecting like a tea-style takedown video of her, this is definitely not what this video is. So please bear that in mind as you watch. Thank you. Naomi's career in fashion begins with her discovery by Beth Bolt in London's Covent Garden when she was just 15.
I was a bit taken back because some of my school friends had beautiful, long, silky, golden hair, and there was me, just like, a little awkward.
Naomi took Bolt's card, but didn't mention the encounter to her mother, Valerie, who was a dancer that had previously toured Europe. Naomi, who aspired to follow in her mother's footsteps, had been studying theater arts for over a decade already at the ripe age of 15, and had already featured in Bob Marley and Culture Club music videos and performed for the Queen. Although Naomi's childhood was most definitely not a breeze by any stretch of the imagination, she often speaks about these deep abandonment wounds that followed her into adulthood from not having her father in her life. He abandoned her mother, who was only 17 when Naomi was born, just months into her pregnancy.
Not knowing your father, not seeing your mother, that brings up a lot of, it manifests a lot of feelings. One of those feelings, absolutely, anger, but I think that's a really normal thing. And I mean, I've not always displayed my anger in the appropriate time. It's always been in the inappropriate time. But it's a manifestation of a deeper issue, I think, anger. And that, for me, I think, is based on insecurity, self-esteem, and loneliness. And being abandoned. Being abandoned. That's what my core issues are: abandonment and rejection.
Naomi also did not seem to have the easiest time in school growing up. At 5 years old, she was already being called slurs by her classmates.
I was called the N-word when I was 5. I wasn't going to accept to be bullied at school for the color of my skin. My mother was paying my school fees just like everybody else. I had every right to be there, so go take your bullying somewhere else.
An understandably traumatic experience that made her determined not to accept bullying. And boy, did she mean it. While I have long admired Naomi's unwavering commitment to refusing to be belittled or to accepting less than what she deserves, it's crucial to acknowledge that some of her behaviors cross the line into harmful and violent actions. Her fierce determination not to be mistreated is admirable in the context of the industry's historical mistreatment of Black women, but the way she expressed this at times, particularly through physical assaults on employees and others, was and is inexcusable. I will definitely be going deeper into this later on in the video, but I just wanted to state that here just so that that's clear. After being discovered by Beth Bolt of Synchro Modeling Agency, her first major shoot was with British Elle, marking the beginning of her professional modeling career. And one of those very first shoots with Elle was actually overseas. She got flown out all the way to New Orleans, which reminds me, it's so incredible to me that as a relative unknown, Naomi was getting flown out to do shoots abroad. Please bring back magazine budgets. Bring back shooting on location. These days, all that we ever get are these sourceless editorial shoots, which is one of the many reasons why print media is dying, but that's a conversation for another day. Naomi kept her modeling career a secret from her mother until the Elle shoot, as she obviously needed her mother's permission to travel to America, being that she was still a minor. Martin Brading was the photographer on the shoot. He shot her in 2 separate editorials on that trip, including one called Land Girls, which depicted Naomi as a slave on a plantation surrounded by 6 other white models. This was shot on an actual plantation, by the way. I can't find many images of this shoot online, probably for obvious reasons, but you might want to check the August 1986 issue of Elle UK if you have access to it. I do not. This is completely wild to me. I don't know how or why that was allowed to run, but moving on. Around this time, Naomi became friends with Christy Turlington, a lifelong close friend. seemingly, and one of her primary collaborators. At 16, Naomi transitioned to the catwalk, finding it similar to live theater, yet more comfortable. As a newcomer to modeling, Naomi was still quite shy. She found it easier to be on the catwalk than performing in live theater because she felt more comfortable representing designers on the runway rather than with dance or theater, where she felt that she had to show up completely as herself. It took about 9 months for her to find her rhythm. During this time, she formed connections with designers like Jasper Conran, who seems to have been a really big deal at the time, which was shocking to me considering I only really know him for these little vintage baby tees. So I was in disbelief discovering the true breadth of his work. During this early stage, she admired British models like Amanda Casleg, Gail Elliott, and Yasmin Le Bon, and was already at this time beginning to recognize the strong link between music and fashion in 1980s London. Naomi was also kind of part of the whole Buffalo movement, led by influential men's stylist Ray Petrie. The whole Buffalo thing was both a style aesthetic, but also a subculture that acted as an incubator for young talent. They were for a time a really tight-knit group. They shared clothes and often apparently pulled money for Chinese takeaways, which I think is really cute. Model Bethan Hardison, whom Naomi regarded as a godmother, was also part of the whole Buffalo movement. In the book, Naomi in Fashion, it is suggested that Naomi's relationship with Ray Petrie was one of the biggest sources of encouragement in advancing her career during the early stages. In 1986, Naomi went on her first trip to Paris to meet with French Elle. Again, Elle, they had such a huge role in ushering her into the industry. She was 16 at this point and initially accompanied by her aunt. This was meant to be a short trip, but she ends up spending the entire summer there. And it's clear from Naomi's recollection of what she experienced that summer that her aunt at some point leaves her alone, completely unsupervised in Paris. This had pretty disastrous consequences. Her life changed dramatically during this trip, particularly one night in July. After being robbed by a pickpocket, this left her completely cleaned out with no money, as she had had her traveler's checks stolen, which were her only guaranteed source of money for the entire summer. Taking pity on her after she was robbed, a model friend of hers, Amanda, invited her to a dinner hosted by the designer Azadine Alaïa. This meeting marked the beginning of what became one of Naomi's most significant professional and personal relationships. After their initial encounter, Alaïa expressed an extreme paternalistic, quote-unquote, love for Naomi, despite the fact that they initially couldn't communicate directly. Naomi didn't speak French and Alaïa didn't speak English. He prepared her dinner and called her mother, Valerie, who did speak French, to ensure her that he would take care of Naomi like she was his own daughter, and offered her a room in his house. However, before offering this paternal role, he had her work for him, of course, to ensure that he could make money off of her. While Naomi always maintained that Alaïa was one of her greatest protectors in the industry, it's difficult not to see some red flags in this situation. The decision by Naomi's family to allow a 16-year-old Naomi to be taken in by a man that they had never met without proper vetting or supervision is deeply weird to me. Placing such a young and impressionable girl in the care of a stranger could have easily led to exploitation or abuse. Naomi's career might have benefited from Alaïa's guidance, but it was a huge gamble that could have gone terribly wrong. This situation raises broader questions about the fashion industry's history of placing young models in these precarious situations without proper support systems. It underscores a lack of parental oversight in Naomi's case, as well as a disturbing trend in the industry where the well-being of models is often overlooked in favor of career advancement. Naomi's apparent positive experience with Alaïa should not overshadow the potential danger of such a strange arrangement. Naomi often referred to Alaïa as Papa, and while some people might find this cute, I guess I just really don't. I find the lack of boundaries here quite troubling. Their relationship, while strong and deeply intertwined professionally, raises real questions about the dynamic of power and the potential for exploitation. However, I feel Naomi's later association with noted powerful abusive men make it necessary to reflect on how this early dynamic with alaïa might have shaped her understanding of this brand of professional relationship we see replicated a lot in the entertainment industry. By the late 80s, Naomi's career began to take off in major ways. She walked her first show in Paris for Comme des Garçons, which took place at the Louvre, followed by major appearances at Yohji Yamamoto, Yves Saint Laurent, and Chanel, all in the same year. This cream fur dress she wore on the Yves Saint Laurent runway that year has been on my mood boards for years, and I had no idea this show was so early in her career. Naomi was not only experiencing her first little taste of career success, but also was on the cusp of being propelled to a new level, all while navigating the challenges that came with breaking glass ceilings. Naomi has always been vocal about prejudice in the fashion industry. As a black model in the late 20th century, she carved out a successful career despite working in a predominantly white industry.
People say to me, oh, but you've gone through racism. I won't say I went through racism. I would never accept it. And I would rise to the challenge to prove and find another way to get around it and get what I wanted.
Naomi made history by gracing the cover of British Vogue in December 1987, making her at the time only the second black model to do so since Danielle Luna in 1966. And the first to do it in over 20 years. Danielle Luna was another legend in the industry. Please let me know if you'd like a video on her because I would love to make one. This achievement was significant, but it was her August 1988 French Vogue cover that truly marked a turning point in her career. Yves Saint Laurent clearly took a liking to Naomi, featuring her prominently in the promotion of his first men's fragrance, Jazz. But even more significantly, he became a fierce advocate for her career, particularly when it came to securing her historic French Vogue cover. At the time, the fashion industry, specifically the European fashion industry, was notoriously exclusionary, with deep-seated racism that made it extremely difficult for models of color to break through. Naomi's path to success was far from smooth. Her race was often a barrier in an industry dominated by white models. The idea of a black model gracing the cover of French Vogue was almost unheard of. Despite Naomi's growing acclaim and her association with top brands, Naomi often recounts her frustration in realizing that despite her success, the magazine was simply unwilling to give her the cover.
I appreciate the work of the ladies before me, but I wanted to take it more. I wanted to go further. I wanted to push the envelope. I wanted what the white model was getting. I wanted it too.
She had seen other models who were her peers in the industry ask for and receive this opportunity, and it was clear that her exclusion was not based on merit, but on racial prejudice. Outraged by this injustice, Saint Laurent leveraged his considerable influence to make things right, reportedly threatening to withdraw advertising from the magazine if they didn't put Naomi on the cover, which was a really big deal. Saint Laurent was one of the biggest advertisers in French Vogue at the time. Naomi eventually made history by becoming the first black model on the cover of French Vogue. In 1989, Naomi Campbell shattered yet another glass ceiling when she graced the cover of American Vogue's September issue. For those who aren't aware, the September issue of Vogue is not just any issue. During the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, maybe not so much now, it was the crown jewel of the fashion industry. It used to set the tone for the entire year from a business and trend perspective. It was the fashion Bible, marking the start of the fall season. It drove trends, generated the highest advertising revenue of the year, and to be chosen as the cover star for this particular issue was a monumental achievement. Proof that you had or were on your way to making it in fashion and that you were a major player. Despite Naomi's growing fame at this time, she often still found herself excluded from certain fashion opportunities based on racial biases. In the Apple-produced Supermodels documentary, Edward Enninful recalled how designers and editors would impose restrictive quotas or conditions such as limiting black models to only summer collections or limiting them to wearing specific colors. This systematic discrimination was compounded by everyday racism that black models like Naomi faced in their personal lives. Naomi has recounted experiences where she would try to hail cabs for photo shoots only to be ignored or denied rides.
I put out my hands many times on New York City streets and the taxis would fly by. Then Christy would put out the hand and they would stop. The guy would be like, I don't want to go to Brooklyn. I'm like, I'm not going to Brooklyn. I was just like, why is he saying that? It didn't strike me until, Christy would have to stand out in front of me, get me a taxi to get to work.
And this is in late 80s New York City, so that's completely wild to me. In the midst of these challenges, she found invaluable support in her model peers. Linda and Christy both took a firm stand against discriminatory practices in the fashion industry and reportedly informed that the designers Dolce & Gabbana had refused to hire Naomi. They decided to boycott their shows unless Naomi was included. They both used their influence to challenge the discriminatory practices and advocate for greater fairness. Their actions, along with Naomi's own battles against everyday racism, contributed to a broader push for a change in the fashion industry. One of many reasons Naomi rose to supermodel status was her ability to leverage relationships within the industry. However, it is really disheartening to recognize that her success often hinged on the advocacy of her peers. Like, it's so sad to think of all the young models who could have been little Naomi Campbells but didn't have a Yves Saint Laurent to threaten to pull all advertising for them, or did not have a bestie trio who had a power that was so recognized and unprecedented in the fashion industry that the racist designers would rather completely change their hiring practices than lose them. While I feel this illustrates the importance of solidarity, it also raises questions about, again, the power dynamic that necessitated such alliances in the first place. By the beginning of the 90s, Naomi and a select group of her peers were now being referred to as supermodels. The supermodel era was ushered in by three distinct phenomena. The first was the January 1990 cover of British Vogue, photographed by Peter Lindbergh. This iconic black and white image, commissioned by Vogue editor Liz Tilberis, my second favorite British Vogue editor, by the way, after Edward Enninful, of course, featured Naomi alongside Linda Evangelista, Tatjana Patisse, Christy Turlington, and Cindy Crawford. Lindbergh was tasked with capturing the essence of the new woman of the 1990s. Given the expanded definition of beauty, he chose to feature not just one woman, but 5 women on the cover, revolutionizing the traditional cover format. The second major event was George Michael's music video for Freedom 90. Inspired by Lindbergh's Vogue cover, Michael cast the 5 models to lip-sync the song's lyrics, excluding himself from the video, as I believe he was doing a lot around this time. I don't know, I'm not hugely familiar with his work. This really highlighted the models' rising influence and solidified their status as not only models, but cultural icons. The video's widespread visibility, amplified by MTV, made it inescapable across the US and Europe. Third defining event was Versace's Autumn-Winter 1991 show in Milan. The show concluded with Naomi, Christy, Linda, and Cindy walking arm in arm, lip-syncing the words to Freedom 90. This moment was a true intersection of 90s pop music and fashion. Without these 3 defining moments, it's possible that this particular group of women might not have been recognized as the original supermodels. The collective impact of Lindbergh's cover, George Michael's video, and the Versace show, as well as their years of continued grinding and hard work, solidified their legendary status. It's worth noting that Tatjana Patisse, despite her significant contributions, did not appear in the Versace show and is often less remembered as an original supermodel. Tatjana sadly passed away in January 2023, and in researching this video, I was really reminded of her role in shaping the supermodel phenomenon, which deserves its due spotlight.
I need nature so much for my well-being, my spiritual well-being. And that's why I moved out there and live out by the beach. And I like having space, when I'm not working, I'm not working, and I'm not, I walk around in just jeans, no makeup. I'm out with my animals, or I do, I write and just work on other things, study, and I love to read and things like that. I have to get away from it. That's my salvation, in a sense, of getting away from it and not being in it 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I've never been like that. And that's why I got so involved with animals, with, things in around, like, the ocean and stuff. It's all very connected to us.
I also really want to take a moment to speak about Naomi's walk. Her impact on the runway is legendary, distinguishing her from her peers and remaining the gold standard for runway walks even in 2024. On the catwalk, Naomi views her role as not just showcasing a dress or an item of clothing, but elevating it, ensuring that each outfit looks its absolute best. It is rumored that designers often select Naomi for their most dead looks, knowing that she has the unique ability to elevate them in the way that only she knows how. Like, look at this look, now look at it on Naomi. Exactly. Her strides on the runway strike a perfect balance between grace and assertiveness, characterized by a smooth yet deliberate rhythm, a blend that has yet to be replicated by any other model, in my opinion. Naomi has shared that her mother, Valerie, who, as previously mentioned, was a dancer, played a crucial role in developing her signature walk. In a video posted to her YouTube channel, Naomi revealed that her mother taught her not just how to walk, but how to embody the rhythm of the music and the essence of each designer's vision. Her distinctive walk features a slight sway of the hips and a commanding posture, drawing all eyes to her. Naomi's unique style has inspired countless tributes online, from YouTube compilations to TikTok challenges. Her influence even extends to pop culture, with Beyoncé's strut at the beginning of the Crazy in Love music video drawing inspiration from Naomi, allegedly. And even when the walk flops, she ends up spinning it into a win for herself. Take, for instance, when she fell on the Vivienne Westwood 1993 fall catwalk. Naomi was wearing a plaid skirt, a feather boa, and a pair of notoriously challenging platform heels. However, the real culprit apparently behind the fall was the rubber tights she was wearing, which rubbed together while she was walking and caused her to lose her footing. She quickly regained her composure, very demure, and finished the walk with elegance. The shoes she wore during the fall were later acquired by the V&A Museum, cementing their place in fashion history. Naomi's career in the 90s represents a complex and fascinating chapter of fashion history. She broke barriers and carved out a space at the very top of the industry, which of course is impressive. However, throughout the 90s, Naomi was a dominant force in fashion. Yet her peers like Tyra Banks, for example, have accused her of manipulating situations to ensure her status as the only Black model in certain spaces. This raises important questions about what it means to be successful in an industry that often prioritizes exclusivity over inclusivity. Naomi's journey reveals the complicated dynamics she had to navigate, striving for her own ambition in a fiercely competitive environment, while at times contributing to the same exclusionary practices that sidelined others. It's important to me to discuss these complexities because they illuminate not only Naomi's personal experiences, but also the broader systematic issues that continue to affect the fashion world today. Now, going back to Naomi's impact in the 90s, I'm going to quickly run through some key highlights of her career during this time, just to really emphasize how truly inescapable she was in pop culture at the time. There's this iconic cover of Time magazine from September 1991. The accompanying article discussed the rise of the supermodel in the early 90s, spotlighting Naomi as a significant figure in this new, exciting era. Her selection for this cover was a pivotal moment, marking her as one of the top models at the time. Seeing a Black woman celebrated on such a prominent platform in 1991 was symbolically important. Showcasing the changing landscape of the fashion industry, she featured on the covers of Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and Elle multiple times throughout her career, including one very special 1991 cover of French Vogue. This cover and the accompanying editorial are especially meaningful to me as they highlighted traditional African jewelry, including cowrie shells and what seemed to be traditional Maasai tribe necklaces. The fashion industry has long relied on African talent and craftsmanship, yet it's rare to see African clothing celebrated on the cover of a major magazine, especially French Vogue. The stunning images shot by Patrick de Marchelier reminds me of the many times that Naomi wore Jean-Paul Gaultier creations, although Gaultier drew inspiration from diverse traditional attire, including indigenous and African elements, which can sometimes veer into appropriative territory. I appreciate his diverse casting and the cross-cultural harmony he aimed to create in his collections. And shamelessly, I do love Naomi in these looks. She worked for other major designers like Versace, Chanel, and Prada. However, I do really want to highlight her work for Blue Marine circa 1993-1994. Blue Marine has long been one of my favorite brands from the 90s. Naomi also featured in campaigns for brands like Chanel, Fendi, and Versace. She starred as a love interest in a Michael Jackson video. She was the official, unofficial face of Anna Sui. While there's much discussion about Naomi's runway looks for major labels like Versace and Chanel, her early 90s shows for Blue Marine and Anna Sui are really incomparable, at least to me. She collaborated with top photographers like Herbert and Steven Meisel. She worked closely with Meisel in 1992 when she featured very prominently in the Madonna sex book, which was completely shot by him. The sex book was a controversial coffee table book that featured explicit photographs and essays exploring the themes of sexuality and desire. Naomi also served as muse for tastemakers and stylists, namely one Edward Enninful. We can't talk about Naomi without talking about Edward Enninful. He and Naomi have collaborated countless times over the course of their careers. One of my favorite of all these collaborations is the August 1994 issue 131 cover of ID magazine, the US issue, or Us issue, I'm not sure which one it is, and of course its accompanying editorial. Edward Enninful was the stylist on that shoot and the fashion editor of ID at the time. Titled the US or Us issue, the cover featured two British models, Kate Moss and Naomi Campbell, and celebrated the American dream through the lens of this New York downtown aesthetic. Their presence on the cover and this entire editorial really just encompasses everything I admire about the 90s as someone who never really got to experience it, as I was born at the very end of the decade. This romanticized idea of city life, wearing a coordinated dainty slip dress with your friend while sitting on a grimy street corner in New York, was a true melding of effortless glamour and the, at the time, burgeoning grunge aesthetic. So far, I have alluded a lot to the fact that despite her success, Naomi's career has been marked by so much controversy. One of the first being her highly publicized split with Elite Model Management in 1993.
My ex-agent, I'm not going to endorse anyone, got upset and said he fired me, but models can't be fired. We pay them to work for us. We're self-employed and we own ourselves. So that was really a silly statement, but I don't really have anything bad to say about Elite or anything. I just wanted to change.
See, by this point in her career, Naomi had begun to gain a bit of a reputation for being difficult, constantly late.
And I have the honor of presenting tonight to someone who is often late. So Samira has agreed to step in for me because unfortunately I have to leave after I've said everything that I would like to say about the extraordinary Naomi Campbell.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, Naomi's always late.
And rude.
Naomi Campbell is showing all the symptoms of a child star suffering from too much money, too much fun, and too much fame.
The modeling business hugged the sweetness right out of her.
This short-lived rift with Elite came following a business meeting with Revlon where she was offered an unreasonably low deal. Having consulted with her friends prior to the meeting, she knew what kind of offer to expect and quickly realized that she was being lowballed. She voiced her concerns, probably not in a manner or tone that other people in the room loved, but voice her opinion she did. This reportedly embarrassed John Casablanca, the founder of Elite Model Management, and in response he went to the press. He issued a press release stating that he had dropped Naomi from his agency. Casablanca's, a notorious creep and alleged abuser, declared Naomi crazy, irrational, and uncontrollable. And he sent a fax to his clients announcing that Elite would no longer represent her in the US. He accused her of being disloyal and creating chaos within his agency, causing distress to his staff and clients. Casablanca's was adamant that Naomi hadn't left voluntarily, but in fact was fired due to her difficult behavior. This incident marked the start of the whole diva narrative that would follow Naomi throughout her career. To be honest, I do believe Naomi was probably very difficult to work with, but did she deserve to be dropped simply for wanting equal pay to her contemporaries in the industry? Definitely not. Naomi's representatives at the time, including her mother Valerie, spoke out publicly about this incident and painted a very different picture, saying that Naomi was a victim of racism. She went on to briefly sign with Ford Models, which had already been representing her in Paris since 1991. But eventually her and Casablanca's made up and she chose to re-sign with Elite Model Management. Casablanca's later said about Naomi is a spectacular woman, explosive, intelligent, and talented, but with an uncontrollable temper. We had hundreds of fights. But when questioned herself about her relationship with John Casablanca's in 2017, a rep for Naomi said, Naomi has the fondest memories of working with Mr. Casablanca's and considered him a friend. And this brings me to one of the biggest issues with Naomi, her propensity to be linked with and friends with some of the most vile, abhorrent men. Just to name a few, John Casablanca's, Mike Tyson, who she dated, Diddy, Alexander Wang, who she just shot a campaign with following allegations of abuse and misconduct, Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, both of whom she has been photographed with and were both invited to birthday parties that she has thrown. Out of respect for the victims of these men's crimes, I want to avoid speculating or engaging in the conspiratorial narratives that have emerged around these cases. I don't know what Naomi's involvement was with these individuals or what she may have witnessed or engaged in with them. However, what we do know is that she has been around them, and it is troubling that she continues to be associated with so many abusers and people who have caused harm to women, some of them who she remains friends with, even after they were accused and exposed. I believe there's just no excuse for some of her behavior, and it seems that she has internalized many of the challenges that she's faced in the press, which might explain why she remains loyal to those in the industry whom she considers friends, regardless of the allegations they face. This impression was reinforced when I watched the Galliano documentary, another very controversial, powerful man in fashion, where she appeared to feel it was her place to stand up for her friends publicly criticized in the press.
If I have people in my life that I love and I see that they need help, of course I'm going to offer my help. I'm there. I'm very loyal to the people that I love.
Naomi did arrange for me to go to rehab in Arizona. I mean, she's super in every way. So it's good that I tell this story because apart from what, she's human too.
However, I just don't feel like this is sufficient reason to continue supporting these individuals. The beginning of the end of the supermodel era obviously had a hugely significant impact on Naomi's career, even as she remained one of the most enduring icons. As we have discussed during the late 80s and early 90s, Naomi, along with her peers like Linda and Christy, defined the fashion industry, becoming not just models but global celebrities. By the mid-1990s, the fashion industry began to shift away from the larger-than-life persona of supermodels, favoring a more homogeneous, dare I say it, white approach that emphasized the clothing over the model. Despite her success and groundbreaking achievements as one of the first Black supermodels to reach such heights, Naomi's career faced new challenges as the industry evolved. The rise of celebrity culture saw actresses and musicians increasingly taking over magazine covers and ad campaigns, reducing the dominance of traditional models. Naomi, known for her resilience and ability to adapt, continued to work to stay relevant, but the era that had made her a household name was beginning to fade, marking a pivotal shift in her career and the fashion industry as a whole. She sought to expand her brand beyond modeling by branching out into other areas of entertainment, but famously, some of her ventures were huge flops. In 1994, she released a novel titled Swan, which tells the story of a supermodel dealing with blackmail. However, the book was indeed ghostwritten by Caroline Upchurch, and when questioned on this, Naomi said that she just simply did not have time to sit down and write a book. That same year, she ventured into music with the release of her album, Baby Woman. Despite its commercial success in Japan, where it sold moderately well, the album was a critical flop elsewhere, with its lead single, Love and Tears, peaking only at number 40 on the UK chart. Naomi also made little forays into acting, with small roles in films like Miami Rhapsody and Spike Lee's Girl 6. I have a video talking about this movie if you would like to watch it, as well as a recurring role on the television series New York Undercover. Around this time, she, along with other supermodels, invested in the Fashion Cafe in an attempt to capitalize on their fame through a chain of model-themed restaurants. Unfortunately, the venture also flopped and eventually went bankrupt. The restaurants, not Naomi. These career missteps highlighted the challenges Naomi faced as she tried to transition beyond modeling. In 1998, Time magazine, which had once celebrated the rise of the supermodel era in 1991, declared its demise. In November 1999, Naomi appeared alongside 12 other top models for the Modern Muses cover of American Vogue's Millennium issue, topped by Annie Leibovitz. While this group shot was iconic, it also heralded in the rise of these bland, crowded covers that lack distinct personality that we now see constantly on the cover of Vogue. These predictable group shots began to replace the bold individual portraits that had showcased the unique magnetism of supermodels. In a stark contrast to this, Naomi took a daring move by appearing solo on the cover of Playboy magazine, dressed in a white string bikini and furs. This is one of my favorite Naomi covers, by the way. Putting aside the obvious issues with Playboy, its genesis, and Hugh Hefner, this was especially controversial because the fashion industry often prided itself in having this veneer of exclusivity, which was a direct contrast to the mass market, some may say tacky appeal of men's magazines like Playboy. Posing for Playboy could have been seen as a step down from the glamour of the runways and the covers of Vogue and Harper's Bazaar. It suggested a blending of high fashion with a brand of sexuality that was often dismissed as less respectable.
Hey, I'm a plane to cat. I'm a plane to cat. Okay, move!
By the early 2000s, Naomi Campbell had fully begun to transition into a broader media personality. Naomi was outside, she was on every red carpet, she was at the benefits, she was at parties, she was at the Grammys, she was at film premieres, and she was a lot of these places with Diddy. Her high-profile friendship/relationship with this prolific alleged abuser, Sean Diddy Combs, brought her even more into the public eye. Now, there has been a lot of progress in bringing Diddy to justice for all the crimes that he has committed and lives that he has ruined during his years in the entertainment industry. At the point of me recording this, I don't know if Naomi was directly involved in any of Diddy's alleged crimes. All I know is that she definitely was photographed with him quite a lot in the early 2000s. In 2003, her involvement with hip-hop culture extended further when she appeared in an ad campaign for Jay-Z's Rockaware. That same year, she made a memorable appearance in Jay-Z's music video for Change Clothes.
Sexy, sexy.
This sharp pivot and sudden strong alignment with Black culture feels a little strategic to me, and a direct consequence of being sidelined by the high fashion world. Naomi often faced industry bias that favored younger emerging faces like Gisele Bündchen. Her emergence signaled a new era in modeling, defined by her sun-kissed athletic beauty. Her rapid ascent to the title of the Uber model posed a significant challenge to Naomi. Determined to retain her crown as queen, Naomi continued to dominate the fashion world, but with more of an emphasis on ad campaigns and editorials, leveraging her established reputation. However, the industry's growing obsession with models like Gisele forced Naomi to adapt and reaffirm her relevance in an increasingly competitive landscape. But beneath the glamour of the red carpet, magazine covers, and high-profile parties, Naomi was clearly battling her own demons. As her struggle began to surface more prominently in the 2000s, while Naomi had already garnered a reputation for her unpredictable behavior, but there were definitely other issues too. She was notorious for always being late. I know that doesn't sound like that deep of an issue, though this is definitely a huge thing talked about in connection with Naomi.
Yes, Naomi is always late.
Tabloids have speculated that she would deliberately time her arrivals to ensure that she would be photographed separately from other models. She was known for intimidating other models and young designers, earning her a bit of a mean girl label. However, her biggest problem was her temper, which would increasingly land her in hot water as the new millennium unfolded. The death of Gianni Versace on July 15, 1997 triggered what many see as the beginning of Naomi's downward spiral. For Naomi, Gianni was more than just a designer. He was a mentor who had championed her and other Black and Latina models in the industry. His brutal assassination by Andrew Cunanan outside his Miami Beach mansion shattered Naomi, marking a pivotal moment in her life. Naomi herself has said that Gianni's death was a huge intensifier for her temper, as she began to self-medicate with substances in the wake of this loss.
On Sunday, this hospital in Spain's Canary Islands reported that the 27-year-old supermodel had been treated for an overdose of barbiturates. Cortez was spotted visiting her, and Sunday evening...
Struggling to cope with her grief, she turned to substances as a way to self-medicate. But I don't want to understate this. The allegations against Naomi were really, really bad. Naomi's temper had led to several allegations of violence and 4 assault convictions between 1998 and 2007. One of the most notorious incidents occurred in 1998, where she was accused of assaulting her assistant Georgina Galanes while they were in Toronto filming Prisoner of Love. Prosecutor Calvin Berry described how Naomi lunged at her assistant and grabbed her by the throat and shook her, causing Ms. Galanes to fall onto a couch, trembling and in tears. Although Naomi was initially charged with assault causing bodily harm, the charges were later downgraded and she pled guilty. The judge ultimately discharged Naomi. More allegations of assault followed. After her first conviction in Canada, Naomi faced a series of further abuse claims throughout the following decade. In 2000, another personal assistant, Vanessa Frisbee, accused Naomi of assault. Naomi denied the allegation and sued Frisbee for breach of contract. Vanessa's case was later dismissed by a British court. In 2004, Naomi was sued by another assistant, Simone Craig, who claimed Naomi held her hostage in a Los Angeles hotel and threw a phone at her. Campbell's lawyer categorically denied these allegations, and the case was eventually dropped by the U.S. federal court. That same year, Naomi's housekeeper, Millicent Burton, accused her of physical assault in their Park Avenue apartment. In 2004, reports surfaced that Naomi had attacked her assistant with a jewel-encrusted BlackBerry, although her spokesperson denied the claims. The following year, Naomi was arraigned for assaulting her housekeeper, Anna Scalavino, by throwing yet another BlackBerry at her head, an act that required Scalavino to get 4 stitches. Naomi pleaded guilty to the assault and claims that the phone hit Miss Scalavino by accident. By 2007, Naomi was serving community service for this assault and was ordered to attend anger management classes. Naomi Campbell's abusive behavior towards her assistants and employees is undeniably wrong and inexcusable. Regardless of any personal struggles she faced, there is no justification for inflicting harm on others. These violent outbursts, including several high-profile cases of physical assault, have left a lasting stain on her legacy. While her personal challenges, such as her struggles with substance addictions and the immense pressure of maintaining her position in a cutthroat industry, may have contributed to her fierce and often defensive approach to life, there is just no excuse. After being convicted and facing legal consequences for her actions and attending anger management classes, she has publicly acknowledged her wrongdoing. However, it ultimately lies with the victims of her abuse to accept or reject her apologies. At the same time, it's important to critique the way the media coverage of these incidents leaned into sensationalism and often playing into racist and microaggressive stereotypes about Naomi as a Black woman. The intense fixation on her outfits during her community service was unnecessary. Also, I think as a person who likes fashion, I can understand fashion as armor and using fashion as a source of confidence. So I will not knock the lady for wearing a Giuliano Tesso coat or some Chloe sunglasses to walk into community service. However, I do think the Dolce & Gabbana dress was a lot. I'm not going to lie. The gown which she wore on her last day turned the ordeal into a spectacle. It's important not to lose sight of the harm that was done, which is ultimately more significant than the spectacle.
She's going to be getting down on her knees, scrubbing. They are not going easy on her.
It's Campbell's punishment for hurling a cell phone at her maid.
Following a very tumultuous 2007, Naomi Campbell understandably and deservedly experienced a bit of a lull in her career. That was until the Vogue Italia Black issue.
People have been talking about how fashion hardly ever had any Black girls modeling. And a lot of people complained about it, but no one did anything about it. So by producing this special issue, Franca took all the excuses away.
Balls and the courage to go out and say, I'm doing this issue. No one else has dared to do that.
The Black issue of Vogue Italia, published in July 2008, was a groundbreaking edition that exclusively featured Black models making a bold statement. This issue, masterminded by the legendary editor-in-chief Franca Sozzani, captured by renowned photographer Steven Meisel, was created in direct response to the persistent underrepresentation of Black models in fashion. The issue was monumental for several reasons, provided crucial representation by showcasing the beauty, talent, and versatility of Black women, featuring Black models like Naomi, Laila Kabed, Jordan Dunn, and Alec Webb. Culturally and politically, this issue challenged the industry's narrow standards of beauty and highlighted the importance of diversity in media. It became a collector's item, selling out globally and necessitating reprints, a rarity for magazines. I feel like Naomi's inclusion does a lot to highlight the diversity issue in fashion at this time. In 2008, she was one of very few Black models who had achieved such high levels of success and recognition. Of the 4 cover stars of the Black issue, she was the only one at the time who had longevity in the industry, and today is still the only one working at such a high level, still on runways and still on magazine covers. This scarcity of representation in the fashion world meant that Naomi, despite her wrongdoings, was seen as indispensable. She was not just a supermodel, but also a symbol of the limited opportunities available to Black models. The success of one often masked the exclusion of many. It's sad that the fashion world's need to project diversity often rests, even to this day, on the shoulders of just a handful of Black models. Post the Black issue and Naomi's very turbulent mid-2000s, Naomi was obviously still present in the industry, but nowhere near as much as she was in the 90s and even in the earlier 2000s. So she, of course, continued to pivot, and in 2013, she featured in and was an executive producer in The Face. She took on the role of a mentor and judge in the reality show aimed at discovering new modeling talent. Known for her fierce competitiveness, Naomi's presence on the show was very memorable, but it also highlighted what some feel to be another long-standing issue. Throughout her career, Naomi had often been perceived as having difficulty getting along with other women, a reputation fueled by her high-profile, widely discussed feuds. In 2005, Tyra Banks invited Naomi onto her talk show, The Tyra Banks Show, to address their long-rumored feud. Tyra accused Naomi of making hostile remarks and engaging in confrontational behavior, including an incident on a work trip where they shot this iconic editorial in Anguilla.
You let me put my head in your lap, or you put my feet on your lap.
Right.
And you're like, sweetie, are you okay? Are you okay? And I said, actually, yeah, I'm okay. And then you said, I have to ask you something.
Right.
See, I remember this because I was so new and young. You said, I have to ask you something. Do they try to make you look like me?
Right.
And I said, I don't know about so much now, but in LA, yeah, they really did with the little short black wigs
that.
and
You
stuff.
told me that, yeah, I
yes.
remember.
And Naomi, you got up, pushed me away and said, yeah, I thought so. And you turned.
I did.
You went from the sweetest woman that was giving me vitamins to someone that terrified me on that trip.
Naomi, however, largely denied these accusations on the show.
I was told on that trip that I was sent home because you didn't want me there anymore. So I didn't finish that trip.
True.
That's what I was told.
I don't have the power of Anna Wintour.
Despite her denials, Naomi offered a somewhat indirect apology, and the two hugged it out, seemingly putting their differences to rest. However, the tensions between them resurfaced over the years. In 2013, while promoting her reality show The Face, Naomi commented on Tyra's success, expressing pride at her achievements, but also distancing herself from the drama by saying she didn't watch other modeling reality TV shows. On The Face, this reputation followed her, with tensions often flaring up between her and contestants as well as the other mentors. Naomi's interactions were sometimes seen as harsh, and her insistence on perfection would come across as intimidating. While her tough love approach undoubtedly stemmed from her own experiences of how competitive fashion could be, I think with some of these incidents her energy was warranted, but definitely unhinged.
I'll leave the dress. Why is she pointing?
Don't point the finger! Do you want to be eliminated because of a finger?
However, she was a producer on the show, and there were obviously games being played. I feel like she was almost acting as a caricature of herself, and things were obviously played up for the cameras.
Don't compare. Wait a minute. Don't compare. Don't compare yourself to me.
They would never make you walk in a dress
not on my level, Nicole. You never will be on my level. Do not compare yourself to me. When I worked for Gianni Versace, I never touched my dress. Show me a picture. Give me that.
In terms of her actual modeling career in the 2010s, I don't have much to actually say because I'm not gonna lie, I find this era of fashion extremely creatively uninteresting. Also, she was just barely on the runway. In 2015, Naomi entered her actress era. She had a recurring role in the Fox drama Empire, where she portrayed Camilla Marks, a fashion designer and love interest of Hakeem Lyon. That same year, she appeared in a 2-episode arc in American Horror Story Hotel, playing Claudia Bankson, a Vogue editor. I remember watching this and I did love her on the show. In 2018, Naomi was still in her acting bag. She joined the cast of Fox's musical drama Star, where she played Rose Kane, the mother of Alexandra Kane, played by the beautiful Ryan Destiny. I never watched this, but I do remember seeing this picture of them together. Great casting. I think they really look alike. By the late 2010s, we kind of started to see the beginnings of a Naomi rebrand. In September 2017, she appeared in Versace's Spring-Summer 2018 show, celebrating the late Gianni Versace alongside other iconic models like Claudia Schiffer, Cindy Crawford, and Carla Bruni. She also featured in the campaign for this collection. In February 2018, Naomi, along with Kate Moss, returned to the runway to close Kim Jones's final menswear show for Louis Vuitton. And then in April of that year, she graced the cover of British GQ alongside, at the time, boyfriend and rapper Skepta. I feel like this rebrand was very much driven by a wave of nostalgia and finally a growing celebration of Black beauty. The increasing recognition of the challenges Black women face in the fashion industry and just the greater world in general. This period marked a turning point where the industry and the public alike started to more actively honor and embrace Black culture. Naomi's resurgence wasn't just a product of external forces, it seemed to be very much by her own design. As the world began to pay more attention to the importance of diversity and representation, Naomi had all along been strategically positioning herself at the forefront of this cultural shift. And also just had put in so much work during the course of her career that if you are a fashion girl or just simply interested in looking for images from that period of fashion and you are looking for even the smallest bit of Black representation, she is hard to avoid, and that is by her own design. However, in recent years, there is a huge tension between the person that she seems to be now and the person who she was in her younger years. Naomi has worked to rebrand herself as a devoted mother, philanthropist, we'll get into that, and fashion icon. Her reputation has recently faced another serious blow when she was banned from serving as a charity trustee for the next 5 years following an investigation into her organization, Fashion for Relief. The UK Charity Commission found evidence of financial misconduct, revealing that only 8.5% of the charity's overall expenditure went towards charitable grants, with tens of thousands spent on luxury accommodation, spa treatment, and personal security for Naomi. Generally speaking, she continues to grapple with the shadows of her past. And one huge issue, the elephant in the room, so to speak, is her association with convicted criminal Jeffrey Epstein. In 2019, court documents revealed that Naomi Campbell was among numerous celebrities named in connection with him, a disgraced financier who died in 2019 while awaiting trial for trafficking charges. Naomi acknowledges meeting Epstein in 2001, introduced by her ex-boyfriend Flavio Briatore. She claimed that she had been unaware of his criminal activity and expressed disgust when she learned of his offenses. But despite her statement, the resurfacing of these connections serves as a reminder that no matter how much Naomi tries to distance herself from her past, the mistakes and associations she's made continue to follow her. While she strives to be seen as a positive force in the fashion industry and beyond, she remains unable to fully escape the mistakes and scandals of her earlier years. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Some of the topics discussed were really serious and quite difficult for me to understand how to properly navigate. So I hope that I've done a good job in properly articulating their seriousness. Thank you to my best friend and my boyfriend for helping with some of the edits of the script. And thank you to everyone who continued listening until this point in the video. Since you're here, if you haven't, you might as well subscribe, and I'll see you again in the next one.